Any connection issues, don't worry about it. Just rejoin again and we'll just continue where we left off. And if you can't join again, don't worry, it will be uploaded into YouTube as soon as possible. Okay, now to get started. The topics we'll be covering are the honors applications for the different universities and their requirements. I'm not going to go too in depth into that. And then I'll give a basic brief on educational psychology and information about the field. And then we'll have Dr. Van Pletzen, who will give a more in-depth discussion on the field of educational psychology. And then after that, we'll have time for questions. So please take note that applications for educational psychology are already open, so please look at what you need there to be able to apply. And then those are just other requirements for the general field of psychology at UP, what your requirements would be. Applications are open for psychology. Adverts, it will open on the 1st of June for those that are still unsure when applications will open. Please also take note of those requirements. I'm not going to go too in depth into those. There will be an honors workshop event where we will discuss all of these in depth, and that will be on the, I'm not sure what date, but it's on the Google Forms sheet that you all signed up for. UJ will open on the 1st of July. Please take note of those entry requirements. And University of Cape Town is already open. And then these are the different financing options that you guys can take a look at. I'll leave it here for a few seconds if you want to take note of it. These are the places you can apply at if you need funding for bursaries. So please take note quickly if you want it. If you don't need it, it's fine. Moving on. Educational psychology. So educational psychology involves the study of how people learn, including teaching methods, instructional processes, and individual differences in learning. The goal is to understand how people learn and retain information. It takes an average of 5 years to become an educational psychologist, and they are currently in high demand in South Africa. The starting salary, this changes, guys, so don't expect this firsthand. This is just what we find off of Google, is between 28,000 and 36,000 per month, depending on where you work and the qualifications that you have. And you roughly work 35 hours per week. And the different career paths that you can follow are education health practitioner, educational psychologist, further education teacher, school psychologist, or university counselor. The universities that offer educational psychology are UNISA, UJ Stellenbosch, UP Wits, UCT, and UKZN. I might have left out a few other universities. And then for today, who presenting is Dr. Van Pletzen. She's a registered educational psychologist, Health Professional Council of South Africa, and she's registered on the HPCSA. Those are her contact details, and we will put them also in the chat box if you have further questions after the session for her. Thank you. Are there any questions before we start? I take that as a no. Dr. Van Pletzen, you may take the floor.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. And first of all, Basitsana, thank you very much. This is an honor and privilege. It's always very, very special to be able to talk to students. And I am really very glad to be part of your meeting tonight. So first of all, I would like just to say a little bit about myself. So you all saw my long surname, and if you see my name, you will be even more scared. So unfortunately, by now, everybody knows where is the Ukraine. So that is from where I am. And my name is Anzhela. but in South Africa, I was spelled like Anzhela, but everybody calls me Anzhela. And my maiden name Andrasyan, because my PhD and most of my degrees are in my maiden name, so I needed to keep it. Otherwise, every time I need to explain who is Van Pletzen, who is Andrasyan. So I am Andrasyan-Van Pletzen, but to be user-friendly, I'm just Dr. Van Pletzen. You can all hear my beautiful accent, and as I mentioned, I am originally from Ukraine. I came to South Africa in 2000, and believe or not, I couldn't speak a word of English, and I couldn't drive car. So yeah, this is how I started. And obviously, I couldn't just sit and use it as an excuse and tell my husband, you married me, so now I must look after myself. No, it's just not me. To be able to learn language, first of all, and then, of course, this is so important. If you really want to understand the field and to be a very good or highly professional psychologist, you need to know children. You need to have experience with children. Just learning from books won't be good enough to truly understand and fully understand our children. Knowing this, I was absolutely positive. I started as a music teacher at the daycare center, where I was now exposed, and I had a beautiful experience knowing and understanding the early childhood development in South Africa. As my language improved, then I became a primary school teacher, and as my language improved, I became a student. I studied at Northwest University. I got a degree in industrial psychology, but that wasn't what I really enjoy. I enjoy children as much. Industrial psychology is very interesting, and of course that knowledge helps me a lot in managing people, understanding people, my passion, children. So in 2004, I received my PhD while I was already in South Africa. Then you know that if it's a foreign qualifications, you need to submit to SAQA, South African Qualification Authority, and they will check and they will decide what is your qualification equivalent in South Africa. I was lucky and privileged to get my full qualifications. So I've been recognized as a PhD with my degree and so on. But I was requested to do practical hours, which absolutely makes sense. You need to know with what are you dealing. On that stage of my life, it was impossible for me. So I sort of put my dream, my goal on hold, and I carried on teaching at primary school, which gave me more experience and more understanding of children. As my language improved, I started moving. And then I decided, no, as much I love and I enjoy my teaching and my learners, I would like to go back to my psychology. And that is how I approached UJ. They were the ones who could offer part-time because, again, I couldn't afford full-time study. So I met Dr. Helen. Unfortunately, she passed away not long time ago. At that time, she was the head of department, and she was like, but you already have PhD. Why do you want to do your master's? Why don't you do PhD? And I said to her, it's not about another degree. It's about me upgrading myself and being familiar with the South African reality. That is how I ended up studying or doing my master's through UJ. After I completed my master's, when you complete your master's, only then you can become a psychologist. So you need to have your master's. Then you need to complete your internship, which is a full time. That is why before you plan all this, you need to know that it costs money and you must be able to afford and to be in position. Because internship usually you don't get a lot of money. That is why you need to be realistic and you need to count how you're going to manage. To be able to start with your internship, you need to put the program together, which needs to be okayed by university, and then it needs to be approved by Health Profession Council of South Africa. If you remember, it said that I'm registered with HPSCA, okay, CSA. So this is abbreviation for Health Professional Council. So the psychologist, it's like medical doctors and other medical practitioners, we are registered with Health Professional Council. Every year we pay our membership fee to be available, to be able to practice as a psychologist. And this year it was 2,400 and I think 60. Okay. So you need to be registered with health professional as an intern student, intern psychologist to be able to complete your internship. And it usually takes 1 hour, 1 year, and you do put program which covers different activities. And after that, and submitting your dissertation, that's another step. You will be able to, after you complete your study, your internship, you will get certificate saying that now you are qualified psychologist. And after that, you need to register again with Health Professional Council, but now as a psychologist, practicing psychologist. Then, of course, it's a two routes. One, start your private practice, which is challenging. It's scary. I must tell you, I was shaking. I was not sure. Am I doing right things? How I'm going to survive? And another route, if you are lucky to get work as a psychologist at school or at the Department of Education or at university. So I started my private practice. And I was also privileged to be approached by UJ to lecture the students. I was lecturing the future foundation and intermediate phase teachers. So I was running a very successful practice, and let me tell you, I had absolutely sleepless nights. Where will I get clients? That's first of all. To start your own practice, besides the fact that you need to be registered with Health Professional Council, you also need to register your private practice with BHF. That money is not big. It's like, I think, 300, 400 rand for the year so that you get your practice number. Okay. So you are registered as a psychologist. You registered your practice. So now you can start seeing your clients. And then, of course, you say, where will I get my clients? The truth of the life, the more you give, the more you get. The way I started, I approached my local schools with a free talks offering to parents, to staff. And of course, when people see you, they hear what you say. And of course, you need to impress. You can't just stand there and talk something that doesn't make sense. Then they start trusting you and they start wanting to see you and to bring their children to you. So you have your practice, you are registered, you start seeing clients. But now you also need to have your tools, your assessment tools. And that's another scary news. But please, if I could do, if other people can do, you can also do. The tests, assessment tests, they are not cheap. That is why to see psychologists cost you pretty penny. The latest cognitive assessments, the latest that we all should be using, can put you between 30 and 40,000 for the kit. Okay. Then you need to have your perceptional, your emotional, and if you decide to see children or learners for career guidance, subject choices, then another game. So then you need to have that type of assessments. Those ones are not so expensive. The most expensive will be your cognitive assessments and your perceptual assessments. Okay, and then of course you need to have your practice. I am lucky, I've got big house, so I'm using part of my house as a private practice. But otherwise, you will need to look for some places where you can maybe rent a room or maybe share. A lot of psychologists, they don't see clients every day, and then they will offer their space so that you can use per hour to see clients. And then remember, if you start building relationship with the schools, then parents are absolutely happy if you can go and see children at school. It saves them time. When you do your assessment, it must be during morning hours. Why? So that you can get the best possible results out of your learner in front of you. Okay. So you cannot do assessment after 12 o'clock. By that time, children are tired, exhausted, and you are also not as fresh as you are in the morning. So this is another option before you can go big and you start seeing parents at your practice. So that's another option. Just remember about it. Otherwise, I know you are sitting now and you say, yo, I need to win a lotto before I can become a psychologist. And then, of course, remember, you will need your psychology books because you will have your questions. You will need to look for answers. So that is why prepare, and the psychology books, I'm sure you're already experiencing, they are not cheap ones. They are not one of the most affordable ones. Some of them can put you back a couple of thousands, but you do need to have it. Okay, so this is if you go the private practice, and then what is absolutely, absolutely must. You can't even do the shortcuts. You need to be absolutely ethically correct. First of all, your consent forms. You cannot see a child without parent consent, and not teacher or school signing and giving you the paper. No, that is why we call it informed consent. First of all, you must explain to parents what is going to happen. So imagine now a doctor tells you, you are coming tomorrow, I'm going to cut you, without even explaining why and what. It's absolutely the same type of the process. You need to explain to parents, and remember, they are scared, they are not informed, and most of them are in denial. So you need to have this session, intake interview, where you also learn about the child and the family, and where you sign your consent form. And this is why we call it informed consent. Then, besides the fact that it must, if you start seeing child for the therapy or for the assessment, for counseling without parents' consent, you can end up in a big, 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 big trouble. Few years ago, one of my colleagues, and this is why it's very important to ask, are you married couple? Are you divorced? Are you separated? Because if it's not a married couple, then both parents must consent. Okay, even if it's married couples, I will always see both parents, because both of them, they need to be with you. They must be joining hands with us. And of course, I want to know both stories from both parts. So one of my colleagues, she was seeing this child, and mother never told her that she is divorced. Okay, father is not available. So she doesn't say that they are divorced. When the bill goes through to medical, the child was on father's medical. Father reported the psychologist to the health professional council. She was lucky, 75,000 fine. But usually you lose your license and you cannot practice. They suspend your license. So this is how serious. So please remember, never, never, ever see the child without signing consent. Okay, we have the age restriction after which, you can see child without parents' consent, but I will always see parents, because parents need to know, parents need to be part of the process. Otherwise, you will not win. So even if child is 18 years old, I prefer to see parents also. Okay. And obviously, this is business. You need to pay your expenses. You need to make the living. And of course, you want to make a profit. It will take you some time before you can start seeing your money, your income, because remember, the investment is quite heavy. Then, to be safe, I strongly, strongly, strongly recommend take insurance, professional insurance. Just now somebody takes you to court. The court sometimes can end up with millions. So have insurance, and then have another insurance. I can't give you exact name, but let's say you are sick. You cannot work. Something happens to you. It's also called professional insurance. So be covered. Yes, it costs money. But and one example, COVID. Most of us, we couldn't practice. Unfortunately, in my situation, on the 14th of March 2020, I lost my husband. So beside COVID, of course, I was totally into pieces, so I couldn't run my practice. But luckily, by that time, I had a government job and I was paying that as insurance. So if I was carrying on with my private practice, at least what happened, they look at your average income and then they will pay you, I think 60 or 70%, which is pretty good instead of getting absolutely nothing. So remember, one insurance to cover if something goes wrong, and other insurance if you are not able to work. Okay, and let me be honest, if you work hard, if you get known to community as a professional, you will be very popular. You will be so fully booked that you will say, no, I also need time to rest. So as scary it sounds with all the financial investment, if you give your 100% and you really commit yourself, you can have a very successful practice. Okay. So I had my private practice, and then luckily in my case, as I mentioned, I lost my husband. I was approached by Department of Education, and luckily I took that offer. So currently in December, I will be 3 years old that I am with the Department of Education. So being the psychologist in the Department of Education, it's a totally another game. It's a very hard work, very hard work. I must be honest, in the private practice, you can make more money. But remember also, if you go on holiday, no work, no pay, okay? Well, when you work for the Department of Education, maybe school appoints you, then you have your monthly salary guaranteed, so you know exactly what you will receive. And then also remember, if you work for government, you get your pension and you also get subsidy for your medical, which helps a lot. Now, I work for the Citibank West District, which is in the Wild Triangle. We have 151 schools in our district. Luckily, we are privileged and blessed to have 4 psychologists. So each of us, we have plus minus 30 schools, so I have 35 schools. And then each of us will also have 2 team members. We call them SES, Senior Education Specialist. They are part of the team, so they can do scholastic assessment and they can also do a lot of other paperwork, but assessment, psychological assessment, psychologist only. So imagine 35 schools. As I'm talking to you, I already have 155 referrals that I'm busy assessing. So it's a hard work. And like I always say, I wish I was just assessing. No, obviously we also provide therapy for children in need, for learners in need. Just today I received email, again, big drug problem in one of our schools. So now we need to organize some talks and some help and some referrals, which will take a lot of my life, my time. Okay. Then we also have our own meetings, a lot of paperwork, submitting reports. And like now, we are busy with accommodations. And I really would like you to know about accommodations, especially if you end up with the Department of Education, but even in a private practice. What is accommodation? Let's say child has dyslexia, which means child is struggling to read or write. If we have evidence, which is first of all psychologist report, then child can get accommodation. Reader or scribe, which means instead of child struggling to read, somebody will read for him. Okay? And instead of child struggling to write, somebody will write for child. Then we can also get our slow learners. If you give them extra time, they can complete the task. So we can give extra time. Then we have medical condition. Let's say even ADHD or diabetes, where children need to take some food, some medication. So we will grant them a rest break. And unfortunately, it's not healthy. It's not right. We have so many pregnant learners, which we are also treating as a condition, and we will grant them separate venue. Because as all of us we know, as much we clever can be, exam is always a very stressful experience. So we will give them a separate venue just to minimize the risk of something going wrong and triggering. Last year I had an incident where I got this phone call from one of my high schools saying, Dr. Van Pletzen, please, we've got drama going here. The child is having epileptic fit. Please be here. So off I get into my car, I go. And I was actually very cross with the school. Child lost 30 minutes. That is why I was going to grant him extra time. But imagine this whole thing is happening in front of the rest of the class. How traumatized was the rest of the class, including educators, and of course, how embarrassed was the boy. So when he was stabilized and he was feeling okay, I had a nice gentle talk with him and I told, don't worry. And apparently child was like A++ student. And I told him, don't worry, if you need extra time, I'm here. I'll give you time that you lost. Don't worry. Are you okay? No, ma'am, I'm okay. And the child is brilliant. He actually finished before the rest of the class finished. And then I was very upset with the school and I told them, can you see what you've done? You should have applied for the separate venue to minimize the stress situation, okay, and the anxiety. Now, the child was embarrassed, the learner, grade 12 learner embarrassed, the whole class been traumatized, and we could have avoided all of this. And if you go in your private practice, you will see parents coming to you and saying, I'm here for accommodation. So at least now you have some fair idea what is accommodation. Then we also provide, as a psychologist working with the Department of Education, we also do a lot of teachers trainings. We train them how to identify the learners in the need of support, how to complete forms, because it's quite a process. Then we also train to become a reader of scribe. You remember I mentioned, if I cannot read, somebody can read. If I'm struggling to write, somebody can write. So we also train them. So it is very hard work, very hard work. And remember, each and every assessment takes quite a time. Okay, and then of course you need to write report. And this is something else. Please be proud of what you are doing. We are seeing a horrible reports, actually embarrassing reports. You cannot have decent report less than 10 pages. Please listen what I'm saying. Nothing less than 10 pages. It doesn't mean that every time you are writing reports, you create your beautiful template, and then obviously you will need to change. But let's say it's already 60% of your report is there, and every time you will polish more and more. Like my reports, when I see children, when I see my learners, it's between 13 and 17 pages. So please, we are seeing this really embarrassing reports, half a page, 1 page, 3 pages. You read, it doesn't make any sense. Something like saying the child is performing below norms. We know that is why child being referred. We want to know what are the score. What is the score? Because remember, it's not just cognitively challenged. When we classify children being cognitively challenged, generally we have 3 categories. PID, profound intellectual disability, SID, severe, and MID, mild. So can you see? We need to see the score so that we can classify the child. Okay? So I'm not going to go into all these details, but please, when you become a psychologist, and I'm sure I will inspire you, because we really need more and more psychologists to help our children. Please take pride of what are you doing. Do the proper job. Remember, this is the future of the child. And even if the child is from township, remember, this is somebody's future and somebody's life. Let us really treat each and every child the way we would have loved to be treated, and we will prefer to be treated our own children. Okay. So it's very important that you properly assess our children and then you properly write your report. Okay. So being psychologist in the Department of Education, it's very challenging. It's interesting. And you will say, but just now you were saying private practice, you were so successful and you were making even more money. But you know what? What I am doing now, I have more impact on our community. In my private practice, I was seeing private individuals, private children who have been in the Department of Education. You can make a big, big, big difference. Now, I don't know if you have experience being a teacher, but really, first of all, you need to understand child. You need to know child. And this is my very, 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 I can't even say more. It is important to know and understand developmental stages of their children. While I was teaching, I'm going to share this example with you. While I was teaching at primary school, two grade one children been naughty in a class, and teacher told them go stand outside the class. They were standing on a stoop, so instead of standing, guess what they start doing? They start sucking each other. Okay, the penises, not just kissing or whatever. Two boys. Of course, it's totally abnormal. It's absolutely abnormal. If you go through developmental stages, I don't want now go into theory, you will know. Yes, boys, girls, difference. I want to know what you have, why your looks different, but sucking each other, this is out of line. So obviously principal referred both children to psychologist because this is out of line. Guess what report we received? Dear principal, you need to educate your teachers on sexual curiosity of children. So please don't write reports like this. It's not curiosity, it's abnormal. So that is why it's very important not just to know your taste, but to know what is normal, what is not normal while children are busy developing. Okay. So yeah, I really, I cannot emphasize more how it's important to be a highly professional person. You know, if you go and you check, when I address children or my students, I will always say, we all know about 3R, rights, and we love to fight for our rights. I've got the rights, you know. But then with rights comes rules, responsibility, and I always say, and respect. You cannot expect that everybody will love you, but we must respect each other and respect the child in front of you and the parents in front of you. But in the middle, I always put pride, 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 pride. When you look in the mirror and you see person in front of you, you must be able to say, I'm proud of what I've done. And you must be able to go to bed and sleep and say, you know what? I truly, truly, truly supported the child, and I did. Remember, whatever you do, you need to represent the best interest of the child, not the easy card or what you think is right. And remember, very important, do not harm. Don't cause harm. Then you will face cases. It can happen in private practice, and unfortunately, in a field where I am, we have a lot of sexually related cases, the rape, the assault, the abuse, and so on. Now, if you are in your own private practice and the child does disclosure, you have no choice, and that is why it must be in your consent form that if you've been hurt or somebody's life been threatened or abused, it's a criminal offense. You must report. Okay? So in my case, many times we have children who've been raped, who've been sexually abused. This is criminal offense. You cannot be involved with a criminal offense. That is why case gets reported and then police are dealing. And unfortunately, in South Africa, we are overwhelmed with this type of cases. That is why our poor children, they wait for 1-2 years for the court. And while they're waiting, they are not getting any therapy or counseling. From one side, it makes sense because going through counseling, going through therapy, you can change the perspective of the child about what happened. But then we cannot wait We cannot let children to wait for so long. So if in your future professional life, criminal case comes to you, you are not dealing, you must report to police, and they have a specially trained professionals who will take care of it. And then very, you know, what people think about psychologists, that we can read people. We are, you know, as I talk to you, I am reading you, I am analyzing you, and then of course schools will call and say, Dr. Van Pletzen, you know what, this child is having this big trouble, whatever. Can you quickly come and fix? And I'm like, I wish I had this magic wand. This is what actually people are thinking about it. From one side, it is like you want to laugh, but from other side, you just realize how much honor and belief people have into psychology and how much they believe that we are there really to help and support. So before we go into questions, I really would like us to remember that people believe that we can do the magic, and we can do the magic if we take it seriously and we take each and every client absolutely from all the perspectives, from all the systematic approaches, and we try our best. And remember, you will need to go for supervision. Talk to your fellow colleagues because it's impossible to know everything. And the trick is, the more you know, the more you realize actually how little you know. That is why, as a psychologist, you also need to have CPD points, continuous professional development, general points, and ethical points. Why? Because in the field of psychology, you can never know enough and you can never know everything. So it is challenging. It is a lot of responsibility, but it's so rewarding when you see the change that you can cause, that you are the one that can bring that positive change and help the child, help the family. Because remember, when you work with a child, you will also end up working with family. It's absolutely emotionally rewarding profession. So I really would like you to think about becoming an educational psychologist because we really need you. The children are needing us. Our educational system is screaming and crying because children are in need of a lot of support from our side. So that was from my side, and we agreed that I will give 15 minutes so that you can have chance to ask me questions. And you do have my contact details, but I must be honest, up to 1 o'clock, usually every day I am assessing children, which means I won't be able to take your call. And my working hours are until 4 o'clock. You have my email address, and also if I don't reply immediately, so I am there to help you, to advise you, to answer your questions, but I must be honest, I'm quite limited with the time. So don't think that I don't want to talk to you. I'm just telling you about my life and about my days. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pletzen. Does anyone have questions they would like to ask? You can just switch on your mic and ask. You guys don't have to be shy. You can ask anything you wanted to know about educational psychology from an expert.
This
I
technology, we are
wanna
saving
ask
time,
something.
but when we have this physical meeting, then the connection is easier.
I want to ask something. I
Yes.
don't know if it was mentioned at the beginning because I was struggling to log in, but I wanted to know kind of the course you took to like being a educational psychologist. Like, what degrees did you take?
Yes. In the beginning, Basitsana was sharing the honors. Remember, it's a long trip. Okay. You need to have honors, and then you must complete your masters before you can become a registered psychologist. So it takes a couple of good years.
Thank you.
But it's doable, it's possible, and it's a very enjoyable road.
Hello, Doctor.
Yes.
So I just wanted to ask, do you study educational psychology in order to work with special needs children, especially autistic children?
Okay, now what happens? Educational psychologists, we assess children and we diagnose children, okay? So if it's an autistic child, if it's a Down syndrome child, if it's an ADHD child, we assess a child and we diagnose. And then we will refer them to a special environment. We have schools for autistic children, for cognitively challenged children, and then they, remedial teachers, they will be managing them. So I don't work with children, let's say, in a supporting them, because I am not trained. You need to be a remedial teacher to know how to treat. That is why we have our special schools, we have our resource centers where teachers are trained. So as a psychologist, you diagnose and then you refer them to correct environment. And then, of course, you also support families how to manage child at home. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Let's talk some more.
You can type your questions in the chat box and we'll read it out if that's what you're comfortable with.
Okay. And I just would like to share with you. I know some of you will say, no, this is impossible. Unfortunately, our educational system, and that is where parents are so confused when you tell them that something is not right with your child. In South Africa, you can never pass grade 1 and you can be sitting in a matric. How? So grade 1, 2, 3, it's one phase, foundation phase. 4, 5, 6, intermediate, 7, 8, 9, high school, and so on. According to the law rule of South Africa, you can repeat grade only once in a phase. So I'm grade 1 child. I did not pass grade 1. I failed. So I will repeat grade 1. Even if I'm still not passing, I will be pushed through grade 2 and 3 because I can't repeat. I can repeat only once. So I never passed grade 1, but I'm sitting in grade 3. So when I get to grade 4, I will repeat. But 5, 6, 7, 5, 6, I will be pushed through the system. 7, I will repeat. 8, 9, I will be pushed. Scary. And parents, they receive report and it will say your child was progressed on age to the next grade. Of course, parents, they see next grade and they're happy, but they don't really realize that my child never passed. And that is why when I talk to parents, it's not nice news if somebody tells you that your child is cognitively challenged, your child is not able to manage mainstream. Of course, you will see the tears and your heart will be crying, but then you explain to them and you say, what do you want? Grade 12 paper, that means nothing because your child learned nothing, because your child does not have potential. And trust me, by that time, they are emotionally completely destroyed. Or you want your child to be in a special education where main focus is on practical skills. So the children can learn practical skills like, let's say, hairdressing, bakery, hospitality, woodwork. So when they leave special school, they have skills to look after themselves. This is also very important to understand, not to say, okay, now I have this child, he's cognitively challenged, what are we going to do? Luckily, we have a beautiful support system, but we need to use it correctly. I know this is shocking that you can be in grade 12 but actually never passing grade 1. But this is our reality.
Doctor, I would also love to know more about the internship. So I'm aware that it's a year-long process. And then, so do you need to go anywhere they place you? Is it also going to be like that?
Okay. The place where you will be doing your internship must be accredited. Because remember, it's an official process. You can't just go to any school and say, hey, I'm here to offer my services. It needs to be accredited site. And then you will put your program together, which will consist will include the special activities that you need to complete. So, but don't worry, your university will be able to guide you and advise you which sites are registered, because it must be registered site. And Health Professional Council will not approve your program if the site is not registered and accredited.
We have a question in the chat box where they ask, what happens if you only have honors only? Does it mean there are no vacancies available for you?
No, guys. Look, you cannot be psychologist. You cannot be psychologist. If you want to complete your matric, you must go through all your grades. To be able to complete matric, you need to do your grade 1. So you are, if I can say, intermediate phase on this stage. So you need your honors. And look, after honors, you can be registered as a counselor, okay? But you can only have few counseling sessions. You won't be able to go big and, really explore the field of psychology. You will be very, very limited. If you go for honors, what is stopping you? Just do it and get it, and then you are fully qualified and you can really do what you feel like. And then also, remember, education, this is one of the professions that you cannot do just for money. If you don't enjoy, you are not passionate, children, they sense us. You will not have a good contact with your learners. You will not have good contact report with your clients. So you need to love children if you really want to go the field of educational psychology.
We have another question. Do educational psychologists have job prospects in South Africa, or should they just start looking at other countries for jobs?
Please don't leave South Africa. We need you here. Look, the need is big, unfortunately, massively big. We have a lot of children in need of support of educational psychologists. And then even if you decide to go overseas, remember, you will not be like I did my SAQA, where I needed to be accredited before I can do something. It will be the same. You can't just simply take your papers and be psychologist, let's say in England. It's very difficult. You need to be accredited, and most of the times you need to do some study and so on. But please don't leave South Africa. We need you here. Don't.
Are there any more questions?
Yes, I have another one. Doctor, so a lot of the students, we really speak to each other a lot, and we just hear that, nobody's getting into honors, nobody's getting into masters. Even at the facility I work at, I hear of people who's applying for masters for years now. So what would your advice be? Because I think that's very stressful for a lot of us students right now. So I think we just want to be on the right path and have the opportunities.
Okay, first of all, make sure you have good marks, because obviously they look at your marks. When I applied at UJ, it was 2-week selection process. Okay, besides the fact that they look at our papers, our marks, we went through 2 weeks selection process where we were involved in different activities and so on, and interacting and so on. So on this stage, make sure that your marks are good. And then as an educational psychologist, the preference will be given to people with experience in teaching, which makes sense. So that is why I mentioned that really being, a teacher, it will help you, first of all, to understand children. And this is will be also your winning card if you have teaching experience.
Thank you, Doctor.
Pleasure.
What other departments, except for the Department of Education, do educational psychologists work with?
you see, educational psychologist means you are dealing with people who are busy educating, busy studying. So that is why we are talking about schools, universities, colleges, private practice, but you're going to deal with people who are involved with the study. So yeah, look, as an educational psychologist, you can also take a route of industrial psychology where you can be involved with companies, where you can do personality assessments, career choices, subject choices, also where you can look at the traits. So remember, because you as an educational psychologist, you are allowed to do that type of assessments. This is what I will think about. But trust me, we have such a big need to help our children that you will not sit and wait for the job. But strictly speaking, education, so in a field of education.
And then another one is, when working as a drama therapist and wanting to work in schools, do you know if it would be beneficial to study educational psychology?
Okay, now this is something very, very, very important. You know, you will go on internet, Dr. Google. Oh, play therapy, music therapy, drama therapy, someone do it online. Guys, if you are not registered with Health Professional Council, you are looking for troubles. Actually, now we are checking each and every school to see if whoever is helping our children, they are registered. Because like I said, today you can do all these short courses that have been offered. But you cannot do this without the knowledge of psychology. You know, it's like you need to know how to bake bread, okay? You need to know the ingredients. You need to know everything before you can start making small muffins and so on. That is why when you are psychologist, then you can do all this extra. But without psychology, don't. You can harm. You can harm. Because you can trigger something, you can really open the wounds, and if you don't know how to manage and how to benefit your client, you can end up in a trouble. Without the knowledge and background of psychology, it's dangerous. It's dangerous.
And then, approximately how much does an educational psychologist earn?
As you mentioned, it depends your qualification, years of experience. You see, in a private practice, remember, you can work with a medical, but medical allocates really very limited amount of money for psychology. So according to the medical, an hour plus minus 1,000, 1,200. Okay. So if you do cash clients, obviously you give them discount because now they must take it out of their pocket. Average assessment, you know, full educational assessment can put parents 6,000, 7,000. This is how it will cost. But you will also have some cost involved because of your answering booklets and so on. So some of the psychologists, they book themselves from 8 until 8, which is also crazy because after all, we are just the humans. So in a private practice, you manage. In a government, especially private schools, the number that you mentioned, this is the number. This is the number. And actually, some schools, they even offer less, especially private schools. Any more questions? Okay, but if you have more questions, you can just contact me. But like I mentioned, if I don't reply, if I don't answer, I will need time.
Cheyenne, our chairperson of Psyche, says, thank you, Dr. Van Pletzen. You have provided us with so much information.
My pleasure. But please don't leave South Africa. Be inspired. Go study. Put effort because our children, they need a lot of help and a lot of support.
I think that is all. Thank you all for joining. This will be uploaded onto YouTube if you missed that point and if you came later. We will share Dr. Van Pletzen's email address with you, but just take note that she is a working professional, so she won't be able to answer you immediately and it might take time to respond. And Dr. Van Pletzen, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to learn from you and providing us with your time and providing us with your knowledge. We really appreciate it so much.
It's my pleasure and privilege. Thank you.
And thank you guys for all joining. There'll be another session on Tuesday, and I'm not sure which one that is, so just keep your eyes on the social media pages to see. Thank you guys.